You're listening to the Better 2 podcast with M.Needom. Hi gang, Donna here. Today's guest is singer-songwriter Brian Lawley. He has a record that came out in April called Dream Big. And as he stated, he plans on releasing new music each month for 12 months and then packaging it all together as a new offering. You can find his music on Audible, Apple, Spotify, and most other places where you can download music and listen. But Brian also has a bigger story. Currently, he is the owner of the Mountain Charlie recording studio, and he tells us a little bit about the folklore of the name Mountain Charlie. And fun fact, yes, he started out as a musician at 15, and he decided because he lived in Silicon Valley that, you know what, being a musician is not necessarily going to pay the bills. So he started out in corporate America, and part of his journey in corporate America, he decided, you know what, I'm going to create my own company. I'm going to do what I want to do. And he did. And for 30 years, he was a CEO and an author. And in 2019, unbeknownst to him, somebody made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. And he's glad he didn't, because it changed his life. So listen to his story. Hi, Brian. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. You are in your studio, I can see.
Yeah. My escape from the world.
So you have kind of an interesting story, because you, before you decided to pursue your music full time, you were a CEO.
I was, yes. I spent about 30 years in Silicon Valley, initially working for companies like Apple Computer and DigiDesign, who makes Pro Tools that's used in all the studios. And then for the last 20 years of my career, I had my own company. I was a CEO and wrote books. I wrote a book called Product Management for Dummies, and built an amazing company. And all along the way, didn't have the time I needed to nourish my musical aspirations.
You wanted to be a musician back when you were in high school, didn't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, they always say the reason why teenage boys start playing guitars to get the girls, right? And didn't work very well for me. But I started playing when I was 15, and you know, I knew that I loved it, but I also I lived in Silicon Valley, and I wanted to stay here, and it's incredibly expensive, and the odds of making it as a musician are pretty much a long shot. So I thought, I'll earn a really good living, and music will be my hobby.
Smart.
For the most part, I've kind of kept it alive. There were long down periods, but then I pick my guitar up and start writing and singing, and realize, wow, I need this in my life all the time. And then I'd forget again, and the cycle.
Oh yeah. I mean, we tend to, whether it be a relationship or the job or whatever, our passion gets put aside, and we have to rediscover it. And when we do, it's like, hello, old friend, how are you doing?
I was lucky that the company I started, I was super passionate about, and I was also very lucky that about a year before COVID, this fantastic entrepreneur came along who'd been scoping out my company, and unbeknownst to me, and made me an offer to buy it. So when I was 55 years old, I sold my company, and realized that if I live reasonably frugally, I can make music and do anything else I want for the rest of my life. So I'm incredibly blessed with those circumstances, and that's one of the reasons why we're here today.
Well, and that being said, there's so many people nowadays that are just like, since COVID happened, that I'm not going back to the rat race.
Yeah, that's for sure. I managed my company through two major recessions, the dot-com bust and the financial meltdown, and I knew at some point there was going to be some other event, and COVID came along, and luckily I had sold the company, and also luckily the woman who bought it was just is a fantastic entrepreneur and has tremendous integrity. And she not only kept the company intact, kept all my employees, but she
Nice.
managed to shift through COVID, and they're doing fantastic. So I was able to leave kind of a legacy with my employees because they were great people, and they worked really hard for me. And I didn't want to be one of those people who sells their company and then it gets gutted and then everyone gets fired and they all have to go find new jobs.
What you mean, like Wall Street, Gordon Gekko, and all that? I mean, come on.
Yeah,
When you when
yeah,
you when you look back at that movie, it's like greed is good. And I remember watching it thinking, wow, why would anybody do that? And then we lived it.
yeah, yeah. It's true. It's so true. Um,
I mean, I know it was fiction, and well, it was fiction at the time, but it was like somebody, and I think I read an interview once with Oliver Stone that said, I didn't do the movie as a blueprint. But that's kind of what it became. I mean, it really did become a blueprint for a lot of people, and it still does.
yeah. Well, and just the shift, it's so different than when I started my corporate career years ago. There was the whole notion of loyalty between companies and employees and companies. And I watched that go out the window. Actually, when I started my company, I had at least half the people I knew told me I was just crazy. Like, you have a great job, you're making a lot of money, and you're going to go start something from scratch. Like, are you nuts? And a good portion of those people ended up coming to me years later asking for a job because they'd been fired in the corporate world, after 35 years of loyal service. Thank you, here's your check. And so that's the way society's gone. And I really tried to build a company that was a little different than that, where we all got to create something that we really, really liked, where we really liked to work. And I was super loyal to my employees, and it paid off. I guess it's karma.
And this is the thing. There was a time, and I've talked about this with some other people. I remember working as a front desk clerk at a hotel, and for Thanksgiving you got a turkey, and for Christmas they gave you a ham, and you had, when I worked in insurance initially, we had this team, and it was a family. And once that eroded, attitudes change, productivity goes down, and then they start bribing you. Close as many claim files as you can with a pizza party. You get to stay late, and we're going to feed you with pizza. Well, okay, I'm salary. What is the benefit here? But that's corporate America. And it was amusing today to log into LinkedIn and see that more people are leaving the jobs because they're now wanting the employers to pay them better and to give bonuses and benefits.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny how the employment market, it goes from one extreme to the other depending on supply and demand. And now it's we can't find employees. Oh, we better change our culture and treat people well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for many companies that just becomes that's a short-term thing.
Oh, yeah. I
But you
mean,
never know. Yeah, things may change.
I look back because I live in a small town, and McDonald's here is paying $16 an hour, and I'm like, wow, I remember making $3.25 back in 85 or 84,
Uh-huh.
and they're doing less work.
Yeah. Well, and what I see here, especially in Silicon Valley, is the service industry. People will agree to take a job and then they'll just never show up. They'll never hear from them
Wow.
again, or they'll show up and work a few days and decide, I don't think so. That was so unheard of back in the day when I was in my teens and 20s. You just would never do that.
Mm-mm.
Um, but that's the way of the world now.
So you've opened up a recording studio.
I did. It's called Mountain Charlie Studios. I live in the redwoods in above Silicon Valley, in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And Mountain Charlie was this famous. He was this famous guy who had a toll road right next to my house, and he saved his dog from a grizzly bear at one point. And the story goes that the grizzly bear bit half his face off, and they had to melt pesos and make a steel plate. And there's all kinds of crazy stories about where I live. But so I decided to call it Mountain Charlie Studios, and It's always recording has always been a huge passion of mine. The first job I had out of college was for I think I mentioned DigiDesign, who is now Avid, and they made this product called Pro Tools that ended up becoming the standard way of recording digitally in every recording studio in the world. Um, so I've always been passionate about it, and I've always had some kind of a studio. But when I retired, then I just decided, yeah, I'm going to really buy some nice gear and really focus on songwriting and working on my voice and my other skills, and I'm just having fun.
So are you a one-man band then?
Um, when I perform, I am. I have a producer and engineer in Nashville. His name's Kenny Schick, and he and I'll send him rough versions of my songs, and then he'll help. He'll basically put together an arrangement, put together a mix, and we'll go back and forth. I'll add some instrumentals. When we get it finalized, then I'll put the vocals down in a local studio here, so that I can just focus on singing and really getting it right. So we're sort of he and I are sort of a 1.5 man band with every instrument you can imagine, because he has access to lots of musicians, and with recording technology today you can do almost anything.
Yeah.
And that's one of the huge benefits of COVID. Incidentally, is he never would have worked remotely with people the way he does, but he had to figure it out, and so we do that. The same thing with my voice coach. I work with a guy named Roger Love down in Hollywood, and Roger would only do in-person lessons prior to COVID, and now he'll only do Zoom lessons unless
Really?
you beg him. I got him to let me come down to Hollywood last week and have an in-person lesson. But yeah, the benefits for some things, the benefits are so great that it's hard to imagine we'll ever go back to in person.
Well, and then, you have to look at the whole Astroworld fiasco. You know,
Oh yeah.
when you look at live music, and I was thinking about, because I had heard from a paramedic. It was on TikTok. He did his whole talk about what exactly happened for him while he was there.
Hmm.
And I thought back, I was in the crowd at Live Aid in Philly when Led Zeppelin took the stage. And there
Oh
was a
geez.
push, and I wasn't even standing on my own feet. I remember I was not even standing on my own feet, and I mean there was this massive push. But guess what? Nobody died.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was hotter than anything there, but nobody
Yeah.
died. So what has
Yeah.
changed? Is it because that we've all been so trapped and we don't know social skills anymore? I mean,
I think it's I think a lot of it has to do with we're being kind of programmed to feel less less connected and less responsible for other people. Um, I wrote a song called "Reach Out Our Hand." I wrote this years ago, but I just re-recorded it this last year, and it's on the first album I released this year. And and the whole theme of the song, it's about having tolerance and like being willing to understand that when other people disagree with you, um, they have good reasons for what they're thinking. Um, and you may not think they're good reasons, but they have some assumptions under those. And, I think the world would be a whole lot better place if we could get to the point where people could actually listen to other people's assumptions without just instantly hating them based on the end belief. And I think that translates into how do crowds act towards people. Um, I went to the US Festival in 1983. 330,000 people, heavy metal day. Not all that unlike the concert you were describing. And there was no discord. There
no.
weren't people being mean to each other. Um,
I mean, the worst thing that happened at Live Aid to me was I got groped. I mean, I had a guy literally follow me through the crowd with his hand on my derriere. So,
well, and that's a whole another
yeah.
can of worms that the good news is things are becoming socially unacceptable in terms of that type of behavior. The bad news is there are still people who will engage in it, and
Right. I mean,
but
there's certain things that are never going to change. I mean, no matter how much we want it to change, there's certain people that are programmed that are still going to do it. They see the opportunity, so why not? And at the time I was 17, so sure, you
yeah.
know.
Well, you never know. That may be something that over a generation or two goes away. When the boundaries in society are much clearer, and you know, right versus wrong is much clearer. It could be that all those people eventually die off. and,
I keep thinking that, but then I watch something and it's like, no, because you think we're so much further ahead, and then the last few years have proved that we're not.
yeah, and it's hard to know because the media can pick any anecdote for any particular point of view that's really horrible, and promote the heck out of it, and you'll see it 100 more times than you would have 10 years ago. I don't know if you've seen the statistics about poverty is at the lowest level it's ever been, and in the history of mankind, and hunger is at the lowest level. Certainly not at zero, and there's certainly lots of suffering. But I personally believe that things are getting better, and it's difficult to find evidence of that in through the traditional channels.
Well, there's two things I want to bring up. There was something I saw. And I don't frequent TikTok, okay? So I know I brought this up twice, but I do not frequent TikTok. But one of my friends shared something with me. It was a direct message, and it was an ad in Germany, in German, about how American children are starving, and that they need to collect money for our children.
All righty.
Exactly. Which you would never, we always see this for other
Sure,
countries, for us. And it's like,
sure. Huh.
okay. But I understand what you're saying. As soon as the news media became, first you took the doctrine away that they have to be fair and unbiased. And then you created, well, it's all based on ratings. When CNN became a factor where we need ratings and we need infotainment, fear sells. Just like sex,
Yeah,
fear
yeah.
sells because it invokes an emotion that, I don't really talk about COVID, and I don't want to, but I have to bring this up because I think it was the day before yesterday, I saw the Delta variant is going away, and COVID things
Mhm.
seem to be going back to normal. And then I opened up the internet today, and it's like, well, these states that are highly vaccinated are now battling COVID. I'm like,
Yeah, and and you end up seeing enough contradictory messages that you don't know what to believe,
mm-mm.
or who to believe, and the media, to cut them a little slack. They're now in a position where they just don't have the revenue streams they had, so they have to go for clicks.
Mhm.
And you see some of the headlines, and if you follow a topic deeply, and the real facts, you see the headlines and just go, I can't believe that they're not being sued for this headline.
Yeah.
The other thing that occurred to me as you were talking, I was talking to this woman, friend of mine. She's 23 years old, and she said, "Do you know where most of the people my age get our news?" And I thought, well, yeah, probably Facebook or Instagram or something. I don't know. And she said, TikTok. Now there's a scary thought.
Yeah, because I mean, you can go in there and here's the thing, and this is what I don't think most people realize: the algorithm will feed you what you need.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And I don't think they realize that if they decide that you are saying something they don't want you to promote. I mean, I don't go on TikTok. They want you to go on TikTok. This is the way the algorithm works. They want you to be on there all the time. I
yeah.
post maybe once a week to promote the podcast, and I get like 150 likes, and that's it. Nothing more,
Hmm.
nothing less. Sorry, that's my cat. And it's all because of an algorithm. So if you're sitting there saying you like this, you want to hear more controversy, they're going to feed you the controversy. They're not going to feed you necessarily the facts.
Well, and the algorithms confirmation bias is such a prevalent human challenge. Once you believe something, you will find evidence that it's true, and the algorithms on social media magnify that times 100 because they'll present you only with the evidence of
Yeah.
what you want to hear. And yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive.
Oh yeah. And I mean, going back to what you're saying about the algorithms real quick is I remember a few years back, I was posting memes and it was like, I'm trying to prove my point, and my dad and I quit talking for a bit because our viewpoints did not match. He's no longer my friend on Facebook. We talk. But I realized after my husband passed that it was like, why are you shouting into the void? You're not going to change anybody's opinion. You're just so basically what social media has done is, and I know it's a good thing because you keep in touch with people and you get to find new things. I know all that. But the big picture is it's also very divisive. And it pushes people to act out like they would never act out. I mean, how many times have we seen people act out the Karen syndrome, or if you want to call it that? What gave you the right to sit there and say, I'm not going to be with societal norms. I'm going to state my opinion, even if it's wrong, out in public and cause a scene.
You see, but we've been doing that all along. And the only difference is it used to be you did that with bumper stickers.
True,
right?
True.
Social media is the bumper sticker of our time. The only problem is it's a million times more powerful and you can interact with it. With the bumper sticker, you could look at someone and look at someone's car and go, what am I going to do? Have a road rage and run this person off the road? No, and then you didn't see the car again, at least hopefully. But social media, the gloves are off. I'm just amazed. I'll post the most neutral things sometimes, and people will just be so nasty. And so maybe there's a way through music to start to change those attitudes, and you'll kind of find that theme in a lot of my songs.
That's what I was going to ask you next. I mean, it's like, as an author, I get book reviews. As a musician, do you get reviews? And have you been trolled by people?
I do get reviews, and generally, I think with music, the thing is, if somebody doesn't like a song, they just click to the next song. It's very rare that they would actually really go off on the musician unless it was a highly controversial topic. I'm sure that I could write some songs that would probably give me a lot of clicks. And I've had people comment on the word choices, and there's a phrase in the song "Dream Big," which my album is named after, where it's just I just kept on trucking to my destiny, and then ignoring their fucking negativity. And this one lady went off of me on me about, oh, I love this song until you use the word fucking.
But let's be honest here. Let's be honest. What deemed it a curse word? I've always had this argument. What made it a curse word? Fornication under consent of king. That's what fuck means. So when did we decide that's a dirty word?
Yeah. Now, when did the powers that be that are trying to control us decide that? We're trying to set our morals.
I remember when I became a disc jockey and on-air personality, I remember they're like, okay, well, you're going to have to fill out this form to get your license for the FCC. I'm like, okay. And there was like 3 questions, and one of them was, do not curse on air. And I'm just like, really? This is all? And then send your $5 in, and then you're a DJ.
Well, that's funny. Well, that's reminds me of the old George Carlin routine, the seven dirty words you can't use on TV. And, I don't know if you've ever heard that, but
I have, and it makes me think back to, I think it was Dynasty was the first time I ever heard the word bitch on TV, and I was just like, because I'm in high school at the time, and it was just like, oh my gosh, they cursed on TV. I can't believe it. Now it's like, whatever.
Yeah. But you know, no matter what kind of artist you are, you'll have somebody complain. I remember one of the business books I wrote. Somebody wrote in this just incensed email. You know, I can't believe that you didn't proof your book better because on page 36, paragraph 2, you're missing a comma.
Oh, I know those people. Yes. Yeah.
But I was happy they bought the book, and I hope they
Yeah.
got something out of it.
Well, here's the thing. You can proofread the book. You can have another person proofread the book. My first book, I think I've had 3 people go through it, and then I hired a professional. And guess what? I have still found something wrong with
Right.
it.
Yeah, yeah, and I went through the same process, and
Yeah.
you know, even once the book's out and a very large number of people have read it, you'll find most of the things. But luckily, I don't have to worry about grammar errors in my songs.
No, no, that's an easy thing. You just have to worry about, playing the bum note if you're doing it live, which hopefully you're trained
Yeah.
enough not to do that now.
Yes, yes. Well, there's this great meme that's going around with musicians. It's, you know, probability you'll hit the wrong note. It's like, you know, you're practicing by yourself, 0%. You know, you're recording, 30, 40%. You're playing live, 95%. You know, chances
Or
are you'll hit the wrong note at the wrong time, and you know that's just part of I think learning to be graceful. You know.
first time I played bass on stage, I was in a trio and I played the wrong note in the same arpeggio. Nobody else knew I screwed up, but I certainly did.
Yeah, yeah. The only people who'll ever know are the musicians in the crowd who are really listening. That
Yeah.
yeah, like they never make a mistake.
Well, exactly. I mean, you see pros do it. You see pros
Oh
hit
yeah.
bum notes. I mean, I literally
So fun.
watched I literally watched a guy screw up on stage, a big name musician screw up on stage and walk off.
Is that right?
Yeah. And then come back on and they alleged the bass was out of tune, walked off again. The guitarist and the singer did something, and then the bass player came back and played again.
Hmm.
And when I asked the person what was wrong the next day, they told me their head wasn't screwed on right. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, yeah. Um, I try to laugh it off. You
yeah.
know,
I mean, we're
and
all we. The funny thing is, he got booed, and what I don't think people realize is that when you're up on stage, the pressure that you are under, and if you make
mhm.
one false move and your head is not in the game, it's just going to continue to spiral at that point.
Yeah. Um, but you know, but part of that is because there are so many musicians who are just phenomenal. You know, who are
Hmm.
so good that even if they make the tiniest mistake, you're not going to catch it, even if you're watching it. Um, you know, I saw the Lady Gaga show live in Las Vegas before COVID, and that was the best show I've ever seen. And you know, I would have known it if she made a mistake. I don't think she did. You know, she was just so fantastically on.
Hmm.
Um, but you know that's one of the reasons why she has so many fans, right?
Yeah, I mean, I when Lady Gaga first came out, I was just kind of like, while I like dance music and everything, I saw the gimmick. And it
Hmm.
took me seeing her on Saturday Night Live when she sat down at the piano by herself with
Yeah.
nothing else that I was just like, okay, yeah, she's the real deal.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, going back to the 90s for a second, the Spice Girls, I was not a big Spice Girls fan, okay? I was not a Spice Girls fan in any sense of the word. However, I had a friend who was playing with them
Uh-huh.
and he got us tickets for 2 shows. So the first show I saw, and granted, yes, there were a lot of little kids around, but they divided it up so they had an intermission break so the kids could have a break and everything. But besides that, they actually were really good. They entertained and they were phenomenal. And it was just like, it
I bet.
gave me a whole new appreciation because it was just like, oh, this is just bubblegum pop. I don't really, and I do like bubblegum pop, don't get me wrong, but I was just like to go sit in the concert, but it was awesome. It really
Well,
was.
you know, my daughter when she was 12 or 13 really wanted to go see Taylor Swift, so I took her, and you know, Taylor Swift is just a fucking amazing musician. I mean, if you get the chance to see her live in concert, And I don't even really, I don't like her music, but boy, I mean, she's just, and curiously, over time, as I've really looked at her songwriting, she has some brilliant songs. I mean, some stuff that I think it was Billy Joel recently that said Taylor Swift is like the Beatles uh, for this generation. I mean,
Nice.
she's she's crazy good.
And that's the thing. It's like if if you're really talented as a musician, a singer, or a songwriter, your music can transcend genres. It doesn't matter
Hmm.
what if it's not somebody's jam,
Hmm.
it can still evoke something. And that means a lot. If you can make somebody feel something and they're a heavy metal person and you're writing contemporary, a love song, that says a lot about you as an artist.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Lady Gaga because when she appeared on the Howard Stern show, she was playing the piano and she sang the song "A Million Reasons," um, and uh, all of these guy friends that I have who never would have said they like Lady Gaga started posting, "Oh my God, I saw this and I can't believe how incredible she is," because she just she conveyed so much emotion when she did that performance. So I think you're right. You can you if you're really a good artist, you can transcend that.
And it takes something special. I mean, but that goes with a lot of things. I mean, some people will, and this goes back to something we were talking about earlier. I've had friends, and I think it's Nicole Kidman. I'm like, I want to go see this movie. I don't want to see it because Nicole Kidman's in there. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, why are you not willing to watch something because somebody is in it? And it's the same thing with, well, I won't listen to that music because they did something, somebody's in it.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I mean, I know, especially with cancel culture, we have had this big push now.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
If I
Look
go
at the
back, if I go back to, and I don't really want to, but if I go back to Bill Cosby back in the '80s, his '80s
uh-huh.
special and his TV show, and even Fat Albert, as a
Uh-huh.
kid, he was funny, and
Yeah.
yes, he's deplorable as a human being,
Hmm.
but as an artist, I mean, this is this weird line we have to walk now.
Well, and we saw a glimpse of it years ago when the Dixie Chicks made their statements, and and they lost half their fans. And talk about an amazing group of musicians, and to then say, "I'm just never going to listen to them again. I have no desire to," because they have a differing opinion of me than I do. um, but I don't know. There's a theory in Taoism that says when in order for things to change, you have to get to one real extreme, and once you hit that extreme, then things will change back and go the complete opposite. So I like to think that all this stuff we're talking about, cancel culture and lack of tolerance, I like to think that we're almost at that point.
I keep hoping. I mean, I thought, back in the early '90s, I thought maybe we had moved along in the race issue because of the fact that I grew up in New Orleans and I had seen some changes, but you know, obviously history recently has dictated that's not necessarily the case. But
Sure.
it's just hopefully we keep pushing so we can swing back to a middle ground because that's really where we need to be is a middle ground.
Yep. Yep. Well, where are the leaders and the heroes who can bring us to that middle ground? You know?
You would have to take out the financial aspect of the politics. You would have to take out a lot of
Mhm.
that in order to get there.
Sure.
I was talking to somebody the other day about the fact that if you actually had politicians instead of spending money on commercials that
Hmm.
actually invested into their cities that they wanted to help, that they want to
Hmm.
be in charge of, wouldn't the word of mouth get them enough publicity instead of wasting that
Possibly.
revenue?
You know, one of the places I traveled a couple of years ago was the country of Bhutan, and Bhutan is known for they run their economy based on this thing called the gross national happiness
Okay.
quotient rather than gross domestic product. So every 7 years they survey every single person in Bhutan and ask them what they're happy about and what they're not happy about. Education, political corruption. But while we were there was an election going on, and their election rules were fascinating. Each candidate is given $2,000, and they're not allowed to spend more than that. If they spend any more than that, they're disqualified immediately. And they're given a format for how they have to present their information, basically on flyers. So there's no mudslinging, and it's so different than the way things are here. And You never know. We may at some point people may just get fed up enough that they actually take the power away from the politicians. You can't expect the politicians to vote the power away from themselves. Are we going to see term limits? People are going to have to get really angry
and here's
here's
the interesting thing about term limits. Term limits sound really good, but do term limits also broker in the fact that, okay, well, then we'll buy this candidate, insert this person in there to do our agenda, and then when their time's up, we'll bring in somebody else? I mean, will term limits really work?
True. Although once that person's in, they can go rogue and they don't have to worry about getting funded for the next round. But
we can hope.
There's my optimistic side again.
Oh no, it's great. I think it's great, and I like the idea. I like the idea of what Bhutan does. I do, and I would love to see us care more about people instead of things or what people are doing with their. I don't care what Kim Kardashian is wearing. But we have a society that, that's what people want to know.
Yeah. They know how to make it addicting.
Reality TV. I mean, it's not reality, but yet if you argue with somebody, it's like arguing about wrestling. And I don't know where you fall on wrestling, but arguing with somebody about wrestling, yes, they do take hits. I'm not saying they don't. But it's all scripted.
It's staged, sure.
I mean, did you not hear about combat fighting classes in acting schools?
And yet, I think it's been a while, but there was a time where I saw a poll that the WWF was like one of the most popular things that people watch, and I'm pretty sure that most of the people believe.
My grandmother certainly believed it.
Wow.
But that being said, my grandmother was so blind when she came to live with us that I had gotten an Xbox wrestling game, and my husband was coming in. I was playing with it because I knew she wanted to watch wrestling, and there was none on TV. So I'm playing it, and she tells my husband, "Sit down. This is a really good match. I've seen it before." And I'm like, okay, it was worth it. It was worth the $15 buying the game just because.
I only hope that my kids humor me when I'm at that stage.
Yeah, you have to.
Look, it's a live Led Zeppelin concert. Wow. I didn't know they were still alive. Great.
Sure. Have I crossed over to the great beyond and I'm watching them live there?
Right, yeah.
Anyway, which takes us to your song Growing Old. So what inspired that?
That song, I had lost touch with a friend. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, and the first line is, "I haven't seen you in 1,000 days." And I was really young when I wrote that song. I was in college, and it was the first time that I really experienced sort of the sadness of having had really good people in my life, and then losing touch with them over time. And it's the same is true now. Even with social media, there are lots of people that I have no way of finding and no way of figuring out what happened to them. And so that was sort of what inspired the theme of that song.
And since you wrote it when you were so young, and now that you've gotten older, is it weird looking back at your thought process then of what you thought getting older was like?
It's actually I thought I understood how difficult it was going to be back then.
Think we all
And
did.
yeah, and here I am 35 years later, and it's much more difficult than that. And I hadn't experienced a lot of the things that come with life. Nobody tells you that the older you get, the more people who you really care about are who are going to leave you. Who are going to pass, and um, it's it's sort of a trick that people play, at least in our society. Now, my my meditation teacher is this guy named Yongey Mingyu Rinpoche. He's a Buddhist monk, and I was watching a talk he gave, and he said, in Nepal, they talk about death all the time. So when someone dies, you don't grieve because you're not surprised. Um, it's a natural part of life, and and it makes you cherish the people you have in your life more moment to moment. Um, but yeah, it it's. I wish I could have a conversation with myself when I was writing that,
You
and
know.
say, yeah, you're spot on about the theme, and it might be a little more challenging than you thought.
Well, I mean, if I could go back to what I thought my life would look like and what it is now, it's completely different. Even my life 20 years ago is not what I thought it would be. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because I mean, life is an adventure, and you know, it's choose your adventure game. And we talked off air about the whole what I have. My husband had was a type 1 diabetic, and he had complications right after we started to get together. And there was a long journey there. And you were talking about, you don't grieve, but even though I knew, I was told about 9 months before he died that he was going to die.
Hmm.
It still didn't prepare me.
Yeah, there's nothing that can prepare you for your spouse passing.
No,
Um,
and I know you've had a similar situation, and you know, it's like finding your I don't want to say your navigation afterwards, but it's like your life is completely undone.
mm-hmm. Yeah, um, and what I've always found in my life is when I have those things happen to me that seem like tragedies in the moment, um, there always is something good that comes out of it. Usually, and usually I can't even possibly imagine what that's going to be.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and so, that to me that's what faith is all about, right? Looks like the world's collapsing around you, and for me, I have to remind myself that I'm being taken care of. It's all going to be okay, just like all the stuff we talked about. Society's falling apart and so
Hmm.
on. I just got to believe that there is some kind of bigger picture, and there's a whole bunch of good that's going to come from all of this, and my little brain probably can't wrap itself around what that's going to be. Uh,
And the truth is, we may not see it in our lifetime,
that's true. Yeah.
and that's okay. I mean, I don't know where you fall at on belief. I mean, this may not be the only time we're here. It may be, it may not be. We don't
Hmm.
know. And if it isn't, maybe the next time we see the changes.
Yeah, and it all makes sense,
Hmm.
and then we realize, why was I, why did I waste some of my days being unhappy and resisting and fighting it all.
And I think that's a lot to do with the pandemic. I mean, I remember my husband would watch the news, and I'm like, I just looked at him and said, "I'm not watching this. I'm going upstairs to write." And he's like, "Well, why?" I said, "Because you're sitting here crying. It's about and it's not that I was being unsympathetic. He was crying
Hmm.
about watching the deaths on the TV about COVID. And here he is terminally ill. And all I'm thinking is, you're already suffering from depression. You're on the maximum dose of Effexor. You are trying to smoke cannabis to try, which he should not have been doing. He should have been doing edibles. But you're doing these things to try to help your depression. And then you're willingly turning on the TV and the news to watch something that's going
Hmm.
to devastate you even more,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you can't pull
and
somebody back.
and yet it's hard to turn it off. You know,
Mhm.
I try to limit social media and news to 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night, and being really conscious of how it's affecting me. Um, and the days when I succeed at that are better days than the ones where I fall back and catch myself having watched you know a half an hour of news and and then I gotta reset my thinking.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't a news junkie, but I was more in tune to what was going on in the news. But after he died, it was just kind of like my whole perception shifted. It's like I have better things to do with my life than get sucked into this. And same thing with social media. It's like I'm not going to sit here and rally for likes. I will do what I have to do to try to promote things, my
Hmm.
books, my podcasts, but I'm not going to sit here and get sucked into it because it's a time waster. I could be writing a book instead of watching somebody do a dance on TikTok.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm the same way, with promoting my stuff on Facebook and Instagram. I try to get in and get out, and um, yeah, who knows? Maybe they're just fads and they'll go away.
So back to your music since we've digressed. And I know you really came on here to talk about your music and we've talked about everything else. So you had two songs that I also listened to, which was I Miss You Babe and Thanks for the Love. And I take that was about your wife.
Yeah, I Miss You, Babe was about my wife, and it was in the reason I wrote that song is because there are just times when I really think, what if she got sick on Christmas Day
Mm,
and went in the hospital and she died 9 days later of pneumonia
sorry.
at age 45, and you know and it was bizarre. Even the respiratory specialist, he said, I've never seen anybody have pneumonia at her age, who was healthy like her. And so it was this bizarre thing, and I could have never imagined her passing before me. And so it really makes me wonder. Sometimes I'll sort of daydream about, well, what would have happened if
Yeah.
she had been around. So that was a tribute to her. Um, Thanks for the Love is actually the premise of that song is that I'm at my own funeral and I'm singing to my friends and acquaintances. Um, and the I was in a songwriting class, and the prompt was, "Well, write something, from a different point of view, and maybe you in the future." And I thought, if I were at my own funeral, what would I want to say to my friends? And so that's sort of how that song came about, um, and the production and everything on it is just fantastic. Kenny Schick, my producer, just did an amazing job, and I love that song.
Isn't it interesting when you you pick that moment to go to? I mean, it's one of those things where we don't focus. Going back to what you were saying earlier, that in this country we don't talk about death,
Hmm.
but yet you went there for your song. And I remember being in one of my college writing courses. I went back to college, so I was older than most of the people in my class. I was 26, and our writing prompt was to write a eulogy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Everybody in my class wrote an obituary. I ran with it. I took it, and I took it from my fiction, some characters from my story, and I inserted myself into it, and I wrote this eulogy that actually had people crying. And it's like, but at 26, what did I really know about that? When did you write this? I mean, how old were you and were
I wrote
you
it. I wrote it this year.
okay?
Yeah, yeah. Um, you know, probably in the background, I was thinking about, COVID made me think about a little more about my own mortality.
Yeah.
And, so an upside of COVID, right? That song might not have ever been born if we hadn't had to go through the pandemic. Um, but I'll sacrifice another song if we don't have to go through another pandemic.
No doubt, no doubt. Have you talked to your family about the meaning of this song?
Oh yeah, they all know.
Okay.
In fact, it's funny when I posted it originally. A couple of my friends reached out and they were like, are you okay?
Yeah.
It's not say, that's something you're not telling us. I'm like, no, I'm not depressed. I'm not feeling suicidal. I just wanted to make sure that I was able to say these things, because, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I won't have the chance. And
It's kind of like my grandmother. She gave me a ring when she was still, of course, when she was still alive, but I guess about 20 years before she died. And I'm like, why are you giving me this now? She's like, because I want to be able to see you enjoy it.
oh,
And I mean,
yeah,
that's kind of the same sentiment, because you writing the
yeah,
song is a love letter to the people that have been in your life,
hmm,
and it's thanking them. And most of the time, that's the one thing we don't get to say.
hmm,
I mean, because of COVID, there were stipulations at the hospital when my husband passed, and the only people that were there were me and his
hmm,
best friend came in. The rest of his family didn't come in. Nobody else came in. So COVID, and that's the whole other thing about this. So not many people got to say goodbye to him, and then we didn't do a wake or anything. He was cremated, and by the time the restrictions lifted, it was a year and a half. And honestly, I didn't have. He wanted an Irish wake, and the fact of the matter is, I was too worried that if I went to this Irish wake, everybody's going to reopen all these wounds for me, because they're going to tell me all these stories. And guess
yeah,
what? I get to come back home by myself, and they get to go on with their lives. And
yeah,
it's a memory for them. But for me, as you are well aware because of your situation too, it's your partner. It's
yeah.
so
Good for you for that. That must have been a really hard choice, and
it
good for
was.
you for doing what you needed to do. And I'm sure he would understand. You know.
I think so. I hope so. If not, I'm pretty sure he does. I'm pretty sure, because there's times, and I'm sure sometimes you think your wife's around. I mean, it happens. You feel them around. Something will remind you of them.
Well, that certainly the things that she said to me and the experiences we have and had live on, no
Yeah,
doubt. Um, and
yeah. So, what is you put your record out, Dream Big. Are you planning on releasing another record? This was April 2021 that this came out. Are you planning on
yeah,
doing another one?
yeah. I my goal is to record and release one really fun and meaningful new song every month, and then after 12 months, I'll bundle those together and call it an album, since there really is no such thing as albums anymore. Um, and it seems to be it seems that people stay more interested if I'm sort of doing a constant release of songs. So that's my goal. I've released a couple of songs already this year, and I- I'm just having fun with it. You know.
Although, you say there's no such thing as albums anymore, but vinyl. Walmart's got a Black Friday deal on a record player,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
and
And I have an interesting conundrum in that most of the people who are going to like my music are going to be closer to my age, which means they'll want to buy CDs or even vinyl. Um, whereas most of the people who consume music these days are younger people who, if you're not on Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube and Amazon, um, they're never going to hear you or care. Um, so I decided to invest for the future, and I don't even have CDs available. But if you go and listen to my song, I think I get 1/10 of a penny. So
yeah, I understand. It's like being on Amazon for Kindle Unlimited. We
sure,
get like I think it's
yeah,
0.0006 per page read.
hmm, yeah, and what would be better, that or people stealing the content like they were doing?
Oh,
I don't know.
they're still trying. I laugh because there was a pirate site who says that they have my second book in the series available.
Oh, is that right?
Well, the funny thing is, I'm not finished writing it, so I'd like to know how they have it. I mean, they went as far as taking a review from Goodreads from one of my other books and putting it in there, and And all it is a pirate scam to get credit card information.
Oh,
That's it.
wow. Yeah.
So I've told people, I'm like, if you really want a book, don't go to a pirate, come to me and we can, I'll give you an ebook, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, if you're that willing to, but yeah, a book that's not even finished, they have it. I'm like,
No, that's funny.
but my husband did say to me, he goes, well, look at it this way. They're pirating you. So you obviously have made it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and there are other strategies, if you want to make money, there's plenty of other ways to make money other than the traditional, I'm going to sell you an album. I'm in the lucky position that I don't have to rely on income from music. And if I do ever make a significant amount, most of it's going to go to charity. Because I'm just happy when when people really listen to my songs and really listen to the lyrics and they're moved and they tell me, even if they don't tell me, I'm happy. If I can write something that changes their day or changes their year, that's pretty cool.
If you connect with them, that's the same reason I'm a writer. I want to connect with people. I want them to feel something. And
Yep.
that's why you do it. It's the arts. I mean, I don't think you're an artist, whether it's a writer, a painter, singer, to do it just because, oh, well, it's fun. You do it because you want to make that connection with somebody, if you truly are an artist.
Well, and for me, it's that. And it's also, there are just some things I have to say.
Yeah.
And that's my best way of saying them.
Understand. I get it. I totally get that too. Back to the vinyl though, I do have to laugh because you and I are not very much, age differences is right there. Okay. So there's not a big whopping difference. And I laugh because a record that you could buy in the 80s that has been reissued now, I think we paid what, $7, maybe $8. It's now like 25.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah. I remember giving away a collection of 450 albums because I'd switched to CDs, and I was dedicated to go to the future.
I still have
most of those were classic. You still have it? Oh,
I still have my vinyl, but I will. My husband was a technical junkie, and he has the DAT recording system. He's like, this was out of stock. He also had a Betamax, but he got rid of that. But I still have the Laserdisc player and the DAC. It's like, okay. And, trying to sell this, unless you want a collector. Nah. It's one of those things where it's like, it's technology. It's a dinosaur. And guess what? By next year, your computer you're using will be a dinosaur.
That's right. Yeah. The only thing that depreciates faster than cars.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So is there anything else you would like to tell the audience?
Yeah, I hope you give my songs a listen. You can find me at brianlawley.com. You can find me on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Amazon. You can just say, Alexa, play music by Brian Lawley, or Siri or Google. And I have a Facebook group that's called Fun and Meaningful Songs. And if you're into singer-songwriter and sort of acoustic rock stuff, it's a pretty fun group. Love to have you join us. And if you like what you hear, drop me a line. And even if you don't like what you hear, I'd love to hear why you don't like it. That would be fascinating for me.
I do have one question that popped in my head, and that is, perfect collaboration for you. Who would you love to collaborate with? Living or dead?
Do I get to have is it just a duo, or do I get to have?
You get to do whatever you want. If you want a band, have a band. It's your choice.
Oh, geez. Well, I would probably, if I was going to collaborate with anyone, I'd want to collaborate with Bob Dylan, Jewel, and James Taylor.
It's an interesting collaboration.
Boy, would that be an interesting combination?
Yeah, it would. It would definitely.
I might regret that.
I don't know. It might be a very. It would definitely be a very laid back kind of collaboration.
Yeah, uh, yeah. If I went the laid back route, that's who I'd choose. If I was going to choose, if it was, I was going to choose a band to be in, I'd want to be in probably the Eagles. Um,
Okay,
they're one of my favorite bands for sure,
I can see that.
and they're I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they are amazing in concert. They're just so tight, and I love their songs.
And now I have one more question. Have you ever, do you play your stuff live? Do you go around and play live?
I do. I haven't done a lot of it, and so what I've been working on is putting together a 3 to 4 hour set of lots of covers because people love to hear covers and my own stuff, and so that's one of the big goals for next year is really getting out and starting to play live. At some point, I'm going to do this trip across the United States. There's this guy who did a blog post that was the ultimate U.S. road trip, and it goes to every city in the U.S., every major city, and every national park. It's 14,000 miles. So at some point, I'm going to throw my guitar in the car and just head out and start finding places to play wherever I end up. So
Nice.
I may be coming to a city near you. So.
Nice. And you may want to, dare I say, post this on social media as you do it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the thought of having a dedicated blog about that particular journey has definitely crossed my mind. So see what happens.
Well, thank you, Brian, for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been a fascinating conversation, and really enjoyed it. And thanks again.
You're welcome. So it was a fascinating conversation with Brian. The Mountain Charlie folklore, I guess I could have explored a little bit more because, I'm just envisioning how this myth grew and how the legend became such a big deal. But when you're from certain areas, that's the way it happens, whether it be the folklore of somebody's that's haunting a cemetery or a house or whatever, things grow and they get embellished. It's kind of like Sarah and I talking about a couple of podcasts ago about Sasquatch. Do we really know what Sasquatch is? Does he really exist? Who knows? But the conversation also, I think you guys should check Brian's music out. I did. It is actually pretty good. And I think that, we need more lyrics and more songwriting that actually has some meaning to it. Music's a wonderful thing, but if it doesn't convey a message, there are times that's totally fine. But sometimes it's really cool to go stop and listen and really hear the lyrics and find the meaning to them, because you're connecting with the person that's singing to you or that wrote the lyrics. And that's a pretty powerful connection to make. Just like talking to you guys and you tuning into the podcast, I'm hoping that there's a connection for you guys. And it's an important one. While we talked about grief and loss, part of it is true that we shouldn't be sad when somebody passes. And maybe it's not that we're grieving the person themselves so much as how they have left a hole in our lives. That's where a lot of the grief stems. That's where it continually gets repeated, because there's that hole that will never be replaced, because each of us is really unique and each of us is an individual. So what one person brings to your life, another person may not. So it's just something that we have to learn and embrace and accept and grow from. They'll always be part of you, but your life has changed, and that goes with many things. So I think today's lesson, children, while we did talk some controversy, I think there's a bigger picture here, that if we can all learn to start getting along and be tolerant, the world would be a better place. We could heal and not be so sad, and maybe not have so much fear. Wouldn't it be nice to have a positive world instead of the darkness and the fear and the shadows? Wouldn't it be better to experience life and experience joy? On that note, I will say this. If you have a comment or you would like to be a guest on the podcast, drop me a line at donna@better2podcast.com. All the social media links are on our website at better2podcast.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even LinkedIn. And I appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. I do have a Patreon account for the podcast. So if you'd like to support the podcast, please do so. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. You're listening to the Better 2 podcast with M.Needom.